It's the Mike Francesa Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa Podcast as we take a look at the Final Four, one of the great days in sports, and it kicks off one of the great weeks. You had, or really is in the midst of the great week, you have opening day on Thursday, you have the Final Four on Saturday, you have the championship game on Monday night, then you have the Masters on Thursday. So it is a great time in sports, and then obviously the NBA and the NHL are right behind with their postseasons. We're going to take some emails. Remember to send them at MikeFrancesAPodcast@gmail.com, and then I'll give you my thoughts on the very, very different Final Four, an historic Final Four. First time in history that you will not have a 1, 2, or 3 seed participating. And obviously you have a favorite in UConn, which has performed like a 1 seed the entire tournament and really played like a 1 seed a lot of the year. There was no question. If you followed college basketball, nobody's surprised by UConn. They were one of the 5 or 6 best teams all year. They had a slump at the beginning of the Big East tournament, Big East season, but other than that, in December they were the best team in the country. And then late in the season, they started to morph back into that team again. In terms of size and depth and offensive ability, they can kill you from 3. Led by Hawkins, who is as good a pure shooter as there is in the college game. And they have a tremendous size inside and are a very, very deep team. So they're going to take some beating. There's no question. And they deserve to be the favorite, but they're a very solid favorite on the Final Four floor. That game is between 5.5 and 6 points. And that's a lot to give a Miami team, which has been a lethal and call it lethal underdog. In the other game, you have Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, 2 teams that have defined themselves very, very well in this tournament. So we'll get to all that. But first, let's get to some emails. And then, like I said, we will double back on the Final Four and the thoughts there. Niraj in Providence starts us off. Big UConn fan here. Do you think it's negative that we haven't played a number 1 thus far? No. I don't think it is in this tournament that important. You played Arkansas, which beat Kansas, okay? You played Gonzaga, which beat UCLA, and you embarrassed Gonzaga. Now, UCLA was not at full strength. We know that, and Gonzaga beat them with a long 3 when they were down 1 late. But they beat some good schools, so I don't think it matters that they didn't beat a number 1. Is it impressive that Miami was able to knock off Houston and Texas? Yes. Was it impressive that San Diego State was able to come back on Alabama? Yes. And then shut down Creighton? Yes. And perform the way they did defensively in those games? Yes. But you know what? UConn has been very impressive. They've won every game by at least 15 points. The 10th team in history to make the Final Four and do that, to win every game by at least 10 points. Now, history says that you're going to see a tight game somewhere along the way. That is usually the form. Very few teams in history have ever ripped through winning all 6 games that way. So we're not surprised to see them play a white knuckler in the Final Four, but they are, without question, the team to beat. Gerard, do you think the NCAA are thanking their Lord above that Alabama didn't make the Final Four so they don't have to deal with the incident and the spotlight? Yes, I think without question it would have been a very, very tough Final Four for Alabama under the scrutiny. Miller has already declared for the draft. Did he hurt his draft position? Well, when he goes and does his individual workouts and they have a chance to see him when he is just doing basketball and he's out of the scrutiny of the spotlight from what happened, if he performs to his ability, he will be the second or third player picked. If he's ever picked below that, he could be one of the steals of all time because I told you before, I know he didn't play well in the NCAA tournament. They said he had a groin pull. He was traveling with bodyguards. He was receiving death threats. It clearly impacted him. He had a terrible, terrible tournament. But the kid is the closest thing to Durant I've ever seen. And he is a terrific, terrific talent. And if he goes, like I said, anywhere past 3 in the draft, he's a steal of all. It might be a steal of all time. Kevin in Texas, as a 27-year-old Met fan, there have been not many teams with these kinds of high expectations. Coming off a 100-win season, it feels like the World Series a bust. But with the lack of turnover in the batting lineup, the age in the pitching rotation, the loss of Diaz, how can expectations be higher when teams like the Phillies and Braves have better lineups? The Braves do. Phillies do, though. But the Phillies don't have Harper, don't have Hoskins. The Braves are legit. I don't think there's any question about that. They already sustained an injury on opening day. The Mets obviously have an injury now to Verlander, which just, again, purports to his age. The loss of Diaz will impact them. There's no question about that. It might not impact them as much in the regular season as you think, but it will impact them in big spots. I would not call the Mets complete right now, but remember, you are dealing with a franchise that has a bottomless reservoir of money. So if they need to go out and refurbish the pitching staff, they will. If they need to go out and get a hitter, they will. And, let it unfold first. Let them look at what they have on the roster and let them make that decision as they move into the season. And then they will do what they have to do. You don't ever think that the team that is there on, the 30th of March that comes north is the team that has to play the entire season. You can't say that about the Yankees either. I mean, the Yankees have an issue. The fact that they had a DH Torres on opening day tells you that they have a glut on the infield that has to be dealt with. Torres has to play. I could see the Yankees dealing Torres for a pitcher. Now, they're going to miss Torres. He's a good player, and he's a good clutch player. Do they want to have him long term? No, I don't think they do. So I could see him being moved. It might not be tomorrow, but I can see him being moved. When somebody needs a middle infielder. Now, he's not a shortstop. He's a second baseman. But the idea that you have to DH him so that you can get LeMahieu and Donaldson in the lineup, I mean, you're going to play Donaldson early in the season. First of all, Donaldson hit a little bit in the spring, so he came on a little bit late in the spring. Number two, they're going to try and deal Donaldson somewhere, so they're going to play him. They're not going to sit him on the bench. And LeMahieu, they need him in the top of the lineup. Until Volpe shows you that he can get on base consistently, if Volpe shows you that he can get on base, and I understand people wanted to glorify that walk to the end of the earth, the walk in a stolen base. Listen, the hype about Volpe has to calm down. It will calm down. You could tell how starved the Yankee fans were for something like that because of the way they treated him yesterday. I mean, the ovation he got was unbelievable. I think it surprised some people, and it may have bothered some people, too. Who knows? Brendan and Lynbrook. Severino is constantly getting injured and has been an unreliable starter. What do you think about putting him in the back of the bullpen as a closer? No, I think right now you're thinking of him as a starting pitcher. The Yankees have arms. They have some good arms in the bullpen. Doesn't mean one of them is going to be a great closer. We don't know if Holmes is going to be back to the level he was. Let's see. Let's see if he can get back to where he was last year. We'll let that unfold. But I don't think there's plans for that. And the Yankees need starters as it is. Stephen Morristown. I recall a great clip online about WrestleMania and your kids about whether you'd buy WrestleMania. Does the Francesa house still order WrestleMania? Did you ever gain any respect for wrestling? No, I have no respect for wrestling. I don't watch it. But I don't have any disdain for people who do. I mean, to each their own. I'm very very much that way. I never try to be judgmental about whatever anybody wants to watch or what they want to view. Okay, that's their choice in life. I believe in them having that freedom of choice. Am I a WrestleMania guy? No. Have I ever promoted WrestleMania to my kids who are now, juniors and seniors in high school? No. Are they as big of fans? I'd say no. I'd say they're not. I'd say they've moved on to more conventional sports now than they did about wrestling. They were wrestling fans. I tell you, they are big fans of the new style fighting, which I'm not. They are fans of that. They watch those championship fights. They watch those big matchups. They buy those big matchups. So a lot of teenagers do, and my kids do. They like those big fights. They have a bunch of kids over to watch those big fights, a bunch of guys over, and they do. And I don't even know the guys' names, and they watch those fights. But that's what they like. Shannon, do you see Calipari coaching another school if he's fired from Kentucky? I told you, I don't think Calipari's going anywhere. Plus, remember, whenever you discount Calipari is when he is going to get his back up. He is mentally tough. You can't kill him off. And my understanding is he had the number one recruiting class in the country. Now, the portal changes stuff because the movement of the players, we're talking about 2,000 players moving, which shows you what an absurdity this whole thing is right now. It was not designed for that, but you can't stop it. They're talking about maybe 2,000 players moving. Think about that. So your team can change dramatically without anybody graduating or going to the pros. But he has my understanding, and I don't get into recruiting, but he has my understanding, the number one recruiting class coming in. And when he has one of those super classes, they usually do very well as freshmen. So let's see what happens. Monk and Hilton Head. We know Anthony Volpe is going to bat ninth to start, which he did yesterday. He wore number 11, which he asked Gardy about first. Gardy was never getting number 11 retired. He didn't deserve to get number 11 retired, and I like Gardy personally. But he didn't deserve that. Do you see his future as a leadoff hitter, and would they make the move this year if he gets off to a good start? The answer is yes and yes. I do see him as a leadoff hitter. He profiles as a leadoff hitter. He already shows that he likes to walk. And if his on-base percentage reflects that, and he is a guy who looks at a lot of pitches, we know already that he runs. He stole 5 bases in the spring. He stole a base yesterday. The running game is going to be more in vogue this year with the new rules. I think there's a very good chance if he shows a propensity to get on base, especially to walk, I think he will bat at the top of the lineup. I would like Judge to bat third anyway. I would bat Volpe and LeMahieu at the top of the lineup. I would bat LeMahieu at the top of the lineup if Volpe shows you that he can handle the bat and also look at a lot of pitches, which he seems to be someone who does that already. His on-base percentage was over 400 in the spring. He batted 302 and I think 302 and his on-base percentage was over 4. So he was walking. I would then expect him at the top of the lineup considering his speed. So the answer is yes. But remember, at 9, he's in a very good position from Judge, except the first time around anyway. Phil, who's the most important sports figure today? Who's the most important sports figure today? Wow, I'm not sure I know who. I'd have to give that some thought. Who's the most important? My initial thought was the most powerful man in sports is Roger Goodell because he's the president of the league that is by far the most dominant league in sports. So he would be very high on any list. If you made 100 and you said the commissioners are all going to be very high on any list. Okay. He would be first because of the fact that the NFL reigns supreme. So putting Goodell at the top, he's not a popular guy by any stretch. He's a guy with a lot of warts, a lot of skeletons, but he is a very powerful guy. But if you're asking Is there a player that is as popular or as powerful as as the commissioner of the NFL? The answer is no. Is there an owner that would be the more powerful than everybody else? The answer is no. So I would probably go with a commissioner, and it would probably be Goodell. It would have to be Goodell if it was a commissioner, but I think the commissioners would be the guys that you would be looking towards for that more than a personality. So if you're thinking there's somebody who is that dominant, you know, in the past you would have said Michael Jordan because he had such a reign on people. You might have said Tom Brady for a little while. From that regard, they could come close. But right now, I wouldn't put a player. I mean, Mahomes has had a great start to his career. But I don't think, I think in terms of wielding power, it has to be in terms of wielding league power. And that would put the NFL at the top and would put the NFL commissioner in the top spot. Kevin emails, you and I are both fans of Matty Ice. The situation was a disaster last year, but would you consider him for the quarterback 2 role with the Jets? I don't know where he is mentally now. When you spend your career in one spot, and that was your job without any forethought, any thinking, anything every year. You were the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. Case closed. You were a given. Everyone knew you were the quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons. It was never a question. It was never a question that your standing was good in the league, your standing was good with your team, your standing was good everywhere. And then that ended. And you wound up in a chaotic situation and got all the blame for no reason, got all the blame. And then the coach also took some blame in a chaotic situation in Indianapolis. Would I bring him in if he's not being paid the money he's been paid in the past? I don't want to pay him $30 million to be a backup. I don't want to pay him $30 million. But if I was a team without a quarterback, would I put him in? Yes, I would. I think, does he have enough left to play the position for a year? I absolutely think he does. So if you said to me, the Aaron Rodgers thing completely fell apart, would I bring him into the Jets? I would. As long as it's a reasonable price, I would bring him in. I don't want to pay him what he's making in the past, which is over $30 million. Now, remember, quarterbacks who are past their first contract, who are considered to be top 10 or top 15 quarterbacks in the league, make over $30 million. That's just a fact of life. Matt Ryan, Tannehill. I mean, even Wentz makes over $30 million a year. So do I think he's absolutely done? I don't. But it's got to be the absolute right situation. And somebody's got to believe in him again, because no one ever believed in him in Indianapolis. They brought him in, but they never believed in him. Which time of year do you prefer on the sports calendar? Spring with opening day, Final Four, blah, 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 or college football in the fall with the play? Listen, I think when you rank it, it's October 1, May 2. Nothing beats October, because you have college, you have the NFL, you have college football, and you have baseball postseason. So nothing's going to beat that triumvirate. But May is very, very close. So it's October 1, May 2, and it's far back for anybody else as far as the best months of the year. Santi emails, glad to see Blue Bloods has been renewed for its 14th season. It's a great show. As I know you're a big fan. It does well on Friday night. It would be great to see you on there as a guest star before the show finally comes to a close. Now, we talked about it years ago. It never happened. I have been a proponent of the show from day one. when Les Moonves was still controlling CBS, I said, hey, I know it's a Friday night show. Don't move it off Friday night, and don't you dare go near that show. And he's like, I like that show. It's not going anywhere. And it can be a hit on Friday night. And Les Moonves, whatever you thought of him, he was a very smart TV programmer. That was his strength in life, which is why he got paid all that money. This show has had a remarkable run. First of all, for a show to have a run on Friday night is unheard of. Secondly, this show has taken a Friday night 10 o'clock time period and turned it into a lock for years. They are beginning their 14th year. Selleck obviously is the key. Selleck and Bridget Moynihan have talked about going out after 15 years. Selleck has said that he would like to do 15 years. The last time I visited the set was probably, and saw Selleck was probably about 3 years ago. I like Selleck a lot. But I like him. I like obviously a lot of the people on that show. They got a great cast, and it's a great show. And it's back for 14. And Selleck has already talked about he would like to finish with 15. So as long as he's willing to go, I think the rest of the cast will follow. And so I don't think it's an issue. But for that show to go 15 years, and I tell you, if you notice, I hope nobody gets the syndication rights like they did in the old days. In the old days, they made gazillions on the syndication rights. That doesn't happen anymore. But they still do well. And if you see, Blue Bloods is on everywhere. It's on, I Love Lucy used to be on 50 times a day in all different places. Blue Bloods is on like 10 times a day on different places on your dial. It is all over the place because now you have about 260 or 70 shows in the vault. That's a lot of shows. They do now 20 shows a year. In the beginning, they used to do more than that. They used to do 23, 22. Then they settled in on 20 shows a year. They do 20 new shows every year, and they're coming up on year number 14. The show is still fresh. They never have a problem coming up with storylines. Bringing in Sharippa, who's a friend, and teaming him and creating a relationship with him and Aaron has been terrific. Aaron's going to run for DA, which is going to be a big part going forward, and the strain that will put on the police commissioner. Danny has always got a million things. Jamie's always, got stuff now, especially since he's married. So there's a million storylines on that show. And they do a very good job of keeping it fresh, keeping it current. And like I said, it's had an incredible run. So I agree with you. I love the show. It's my favorite show. Has been for a very long time. It's the only must-watch show that I have. I never miss it. Absolutely. I absolutely never miss it. And it's very quality television. And it has, and Les was right, it became a staple on Friday night, which is unheard of. When a show would become good on Friday night, they would move it. They'd move it to Sunday. They'd move it to Thursday. They'd move it to a big TV night. Friday and Saturday night are not big TV nights. Saturday's a terrible TV night. Friday's the second worst TV night. The biggest TV nights are Sundays 1, Thursdays 2. That's why you always see things for the weekend, like when movies were being advertised back in the days when people went to the movies. When movies were being advertised, you always saw the movie advertisements on Thursday night. Why? Because people watch TV on Thursday night. They watch it on Sunday, and they watch it on Thursday. They don't watch it on Saturday and Friday, but Blue Bloods is the exception in a very big way. Again, send your emails to MikeFrancesa@gmail.com, and we'll get to as many as we can. Now on to the Final Four. First of all, there is a feeling of accomplishment when you get to the Final Four. When you're a school that has never been to the Final Four before, and that is the case with Florida Atlantic, which has not been a tournament staple, with San Diego State, which has not been a tournament staple, and with Miami, which was in the Elite Eight for the second straight year and is now in the Final Four for the first time. So those three schools are in the Final Four for the first time in their school's history. They've already had great seasons. They are playing with house money. I'm not telling you they aren't coming to play to win. They are coming to play to win because they have so much more to accomplish. But UConn, which has won a lot of titles, which has been a very big powerhouse, which was built into an incredible powerhouse under Jim Calhoun. UConn and the Final Four is commonplace. UConn playing for titles is commonplace. So that school is very used to this stuff, as we know. Now, they're the favorites. They deserve to be the favorites. San Diego State and Florida State. San Diego State's defense has been absolutely superb. They were getting run out of the gym against Alabama. Alabama got off to a slow start. Alabama was down at the half. Alabama came out. They were down 6 at the half. They came out in the second half, and they blew their doors off. Next thing you know, Dutcher, who's a good coach, called a timeout. With about 11 minutes left in the game, they were down 9. And the sideline reporter came out of the huddle and said, I heard him say, you have stopped playing. If you don't get back to playing basics, playing defense, getting back on defense, they're going to blow us out of the building. Get back now on these next possessions and do the basics. They went on a 12-0 run out of that timeout. Talk about a good timeout. They went on a 12-0 run. They took the game back against an Alabama team that was loaded and that was now flying in the first 9 minutes of the second half. Flying. They shut Alabama down the rest of the way and went on to a victory. Alabama was 3 for 27, I believe. I think it was 3 for 27, right around there, from 3. In the Creighton game, they shut down Creighton in the second half completely. It took Creighton completely out of its offense. Now, San Diego State didn't just get hot and win these games. They struggle to score. They are not a big-time offensive team, and they are exceedingly streaky. Exceedingly streaky on offense. I mean, crazy streaky. Okay? I mean, that's just the way it is. They are just not a good offensive team. There's no other way to say it. It's not what they do. They have to just try to find baskets where they can. And they won with Bradley going 1 for 8. 1 for 8 in the Creighton game. Okay, he scored 2 points. They need him. They need him to score. They don't have a whole lot of scorers. Okay, Micah Parrish is one of their 3-point shooters. In that game, Micah Parrish went 0 for 6 from the floor and 0 for 5. I actually texted in the second half. I was watching the game, and I texted a coach that I text back and forth with during the games. And I said to him, they got to put Parrish in the game and let him hoist some threes because he can make them. Well, they brought him in the game, and he must have taken like the next 4 shots, and he missed every one of them. So Parrish, who can be a scorer for them and can hit outside shots, did nothing in that game. He was held scoreless. All right, he made a couple of huge baskets in the game against Alabama. And in that game, they got 21 points from Trammell. Okay? They can get scoring from a lot of different places. And they can get, if they get somebody hot, that's going to help them really a lot. But you can't count on them to shoot the ball all that well. You know, in the Alabama game, they shot the ball 35% from three. But they held Alabama to 3 for 27, 11%. Then on the weekend, they didn't shoot the ball well from three at all. They shot 3 for 13 from three, 23%. But they held Creighton to 11% shooting from three. And Creighton is a team that can fill it up. Absolutely can fill it up from three. And their defense down the stretch of that game was unbelievably good. San Diego State is a team that has length. They're a team that is very physically tough. Neither one of these teams is going to blink. San Diego State was down 9 points to Alabama and came back. Florida Atlantic was down at the half to Tennessee, was not scoring, and came back and scored on them in the second half. Florida Atlantic beat Kansas State because they made some big shots when the game was on the line. They got scoring when they needed scoring. They got scoring when they needed baskets. They got baskets. They got answers. Martin made big threes, and Martin will take big threes. Greenlee made big threes, and those two guys in the Kansas State game went 7 for 13 from three. That was a difference. But they have different scorers on that team. Davis can score. Golden came up with a huge game. The big man, he had a huge game against Kansas State. He had 14 points and 13 rebounds. That was enormous. So Florida Atlantic has answers. Both these teams have shown you they can fall behind. They got down 6 twice, and Kansas State came down with trips. With 9 minutes left in the game, came down +6. I think one time they even came down +7. I think it was 57-50. And they turned the ball over, and they came down, hit a 3, and the lead never got back to that for Kansas State. These teams have faced, everybody in this tournament except UConn has faced elimination. They have been down big in the game. San Diego State was, Florida Atlantic was, Miami was. Miami looked like it was out of it against Texas. It looked like they were going to get blown out of the building in the second half. It looked like there was no chance for them to come back in that game. Really no chance. They were getting run out of the building by a very, very good Texas team. There was no question about that. You go back 9 minutes left, Texas has a 10-point lead. And with 8 minutes left, Wong bangs down a shot. Then Poplar gets to the foul line. And then different guys come through. Poplar comes through. Then Wong comes through. Then Pack comes through. Every different guy. First of all, they were brilliant from the foul line, but when you look, they get 27 points from Miller, who had the game of a lifetime, 7 for 7 from the floor, 13 for 13 from the foul line. But Poplar scored 16. Pack scored 15. Wong scored 14. They had 5 players in double figures. And they overcame a double-digit deficit against a really good team. Plus, they shot 28 of 32 on the foul line. And Miami in that game only shot 8 threes. They took the ball and played the mid-range game. They took the ball and just got to the foul line and made 28 of 32 foul shots. UConn shot 35% in the win over Gonzaga. But you got to remember, that game was 15 minutes of blowout. When Timmy came back at the half, when they hit the three before the half to give them a 7-point lead, that was a dagger. Gonzaga came out, and Timmy got his third and fourth fouls right away. And then Connecticut went on like a 22-2 run, and the game was over. Hawkins went 6 for 10 from 3. And they have a bunch of different guys that can knock down threes on that team. Obviously, we know what Hawkins can do. Obviously, we know what the versatility Jackson brings to the game. He had 8 points, 9 rebounds, 10 assists in that game. But you got Caravan, who can knock down a three, and Newton can knock down a three, and Calcaterra can knock down threes. They have a bunch of guys, and Hawkins can get on fire. And shutting down Hawkins has got to be a big key for them. Hawkins and Sinago are the guys. But Miami has been an incredible underdog. I give San Diego State the smallest of margins. That game, I'll be shocked if that game isn't within 3 points. I'll be shocked if that game isn't in the low 60s tops and within 3 points late in what'll be a back and forth slugfest. And then Miami is willing. UConn can beat you on both ends of the floor. Miami is not a good defensive team, but they are a superb offensive team. And they've been a brilliant underdog. And Larrañaga's a superb coach. The question is, can Miami keep that game close till 5 minutes? If they can win it. That's the key, though. Can they keep from getting knocked out? Because UConn has been knocking people out. You know, the Iona game, they got off slow, they trailed at the half, and then they blew them out in the second half. But other than that, they've gotten out pretty quick. And their games have been one-sided. So Miami, you know Larrañaga's preaching, guys, if we get them into a close game late, we're going to beat them. They haven't played a close game. Doesn't mean that's going to happen because I think UConn's got guys who know what they have to do. Now, the one thing they lack is Jackson is their playmaker, but they don't have a pure point. The question is, can Miami hurt them with that? I know a defensive team like San Diego State can hurt them with that. I don't know that Miami can hurt them with that. I think Miami's going to play their game and try and outscore them. They outscored Houston. They get up on the backboards with them. They got outscored Texas. They're going to try and do the same thing with UConn, which is every bit as good, if not better, than Houston and Texas. That's how good UConn is. UConn's as good as any team in the country. And we knew that all year. We knew they were that good. No surprise they're here. Surprise everybody else is here. Interesting opponent. Miami's a very different team to play. very unusual team to play. So the games, I know a lot, I've heard this week, you don't have enough marquee value there. It would have been better if you had Houston playing there and you had Alabama there with Miller and you had some, real blue bloods there. Hey, these teams earn this. And they'll put on good shows. And that's all that matters. They've absolutely earned the right to be there, and they've all done some wild things to get there. And it's a great event. Saturday's an event, Monday night's a basketball game. But it's a great event. Enjoy.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Francesa Podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.